Proud to serve with Loretta because she's not only highly intelligent and very beautiful, but she has spunk. And what's interesting about her service is that she speaks from the heart of America, and both of us can tell you that members like us, fewer and fewer members like us get elected. That most of the people that are getting elected now, because of what's happened with redistricting and all the rest, didn't have to raise their first contributions in quarters and dollars and bake sales, and the voice of the working people of this country has been shrunk, even inside the House. And it's a very important time for our country to try to keep voices like ours there. And we see, even in this race, and I'm so grateful to Loretta for coming in, because even in the way they did this redistricting in Ohio, we know we have to lose 2 seats. But what they've done forces the Democratic candidate to advertise now in 2 media markets. One at the western end of the state, one at the eastern, and the eastern costs 5 times as much as the western. And so you have to raise more money. You have to almost, turn yourself inside out in order to try to even compete. And and we know that next fall, he's already prowling around, the Republican that is poised to run against us, Joe the Plumber, is really out there to defeat President Obama. And the Democratic team, not that we're perfect, but the alternative is absolutely frightening, with everything at stake for us. So Loretta also doesn't serve on committees that are traditional for women, neither do I. She also serves on defense, and obviously California is a place with enormous defense assets for our country. She serves on Homeland Security, very, very important. She's married to a wonderful man who's an Army officer for 22 years for our country, and she travels all over the world. She has very deep working knowledge of our special forces, those that took out Osama bin Laden. She's involved in high intelligence briefings inside the Congress. I can tell you, not only for someone who is of Hispanic heritage, but for a woman, when I got to Congress, there were 24 women out of 535. Do you know how many were there when you got there? There was
58.
58. So today we have about 90 out of 535.
So we're at 76.
Oh, I'm counting the Senate.
Oh, you're counting
76 overall. But like on the committee that when I got on defense appropriations, as the first woman there in history, and I walked in the room literally, I was the only woman. So I think we understand what it feels like to be the only one or to be different, because we've been different. We've actually lived that. And to have working class kids, I could tell you stories about our grandmother too. And it was interesting when we came in here, there was a sister sitting at one of the tables here who works for Mercy Hospital Systems here. And one of the first bills that I voted on when I first got to Congress was to allow Roman Catholic sisters to be covered under Social Security at the lowest rate. Which means that they live in poverty. And I remember voting on that, and a congresswoman from Cleveland, Mary Rose Okar in those days, I said, "Are you kidding me? I mean, the sisters aren't covered under Social Security?" She said, "No, their denomination never paid anything in for them. Though they gave their lives to educate the next generation, they had no work." And so when you see a Roman Catholic sister who's retired, believe me, she is living at poverty wages. Poverty. I'll say this, not the priests. And so, just very interesting. So there's, different paths, and as Americans, we're making it better for all. At least we're trying to make it better for all. And Loretta and I both share a working class, very working class background. That is so rare in the Congress.
It really is, you guys.
Yeah.
It's amazing to
today, even in the 16 years I've been there, to see the change of the makeup of the Congress, to be really people who are coming from privilege or who have access to money or who've made a lot of money, as compared to the average people, you know, the people who really work in their districts and come to the Congress with a real knowledge of what's actually happening in their districts. It's completely changed, and I hope that it changes back to reflect better the population, but that only happens if we vote.
Right.
You know, it only happens, I mean, there's lots of Hispanics in California, but if we don't vote, we can't change the system. We can't, you know, put in people who would understand our lives. So we're trying to change them, and that's how you can help.
And I want to ask Loretta, maybe mention one or two things that you've worked on in your career that you are particularly proud of in your years of service, or an experience you've had that no one else here would have had.
Well, in the year 2000, one of the things that I'm most proud, I told you earlier that in 1965, through LULAC and some other organizations, Head Start was started. And so I was a Head Start kid in 1965. My mother said, I need to take you and I need to put you in a program because you obviously don't know what you're doing, Loretta. You know? And it was in, I remember that whole experience. I mean, it was only a summer program at the time, but it so sticks in my mind as a real changing point for me to understand the importance of school and to learn the alphabet and things that just, I mean, for me, it was a real game changer to be in Head Start. So I got to the Congress in 1997. In the year 2000, I told President Bill Clinton that we needed to increase the budget of Head Start because a lot of kids qualify, but there's not the funding for the positions to have them in Head Start. And so we put in an extra $1 billion at that time in the year 2000 into the budget. And so I would say to him, let's put it in, and he would put it in, and then his people, when they would go through the budget, you know, before they were turning it in, they would get rid of it, right? And then I'd see with that. Then I went to talk to Donna Shalala, who was the Health and Human Services Secretary. I said, Donna, we have to put this $1 billion. And she goes, yeah, let's do that. So we would go into President Clinton and we would beat him up some more, you know, and he put the $1 billion, an increase of $1 billion. The same amount plus $1 billion meant a lot of kids. And someone would take it out, you know. And then we called Hillary, and Hillary's, okay. So the three of us, Hillary and Donna Shalala and myself, we went into Clinton and we said, we don't care who you have to call in, but we want that $1 billion extra in Head Start. So he called in his chief of staff at the time. I think it was, I can see him. One of the brothers, you know, John's brother. John, no, it was John Podesta, I think. Anyway, so we put in $1 billion of extra funding on top of what they already had for Head Start. And that $1 billion that extra $1 billion has stayed in every year for the 12 years that we were able to put it in. So that's one, I think, a very great accomplishment, is that kids who normally wouldn't have preschool, right? Because that's what Head Start is. It's preschool for kids whose families can't afford preschool. That, you know, because when we were at the school today, right? We were at the school, and the principal was saying the same thing. He said, a majority of my kids get to kindergarten here, and they have no preschool. He said, it's not like starting the race at the starting line. It's like starting the race behind the starting line. So if in kindergarten, you're starting behind the starting line of the race, how are you supposed to compete against those who can afford preschool? So I think that's been one of the biggest accomplishments that I've been very proud of in the Congress. I'll tell you one other one, because it has to do with Marcy. You know, they never want to fund things in the health care bill. You know, if women need breast cancer research or something, they're guys. I'm sorry, guys. I love you all. But they're guys in the Congress. You know that there are some legislatures who actually, like in California, They passed a bill to fund a study for $17 million in California at the state legislature. $17 million to study why men go bald. It's true. Because it's very important. Because it puts the fear of God in you guys. And it's very important for you to, but they wouldn't, for example, why women put more money into breast cancer or something like that, right? So, but when it comes to defense, the guys don't even look at the bill. They just spend the money. They just spend the money, right? So we were able to, the women, and Marcy was one of the leaders on this, put $1 billion of cancer research in the defense bill. We've stuck it in the defense bill. And you know what? Where those guys would never put that funding in the health bill, when we stuck it in the defense bill with the help of John Murtha, the guys voted for it. They didn't even see it in there. And so today, we fund cancer research for women's cancer, ovarian cancer, and those cervical cancer and stuff through the defense bill. And this young lady had a big piece to do with that.
When we were at the school this morning, also we were at Frank Jacinto grade school today, and one of the lessons I learned there was that we were talking about funding and how important education is for our children and how much money they're so worried. They're $10 million short, and they're going to have to cut their arts programs and just dealing with the reality of educating the next generation. And I kept saying, listen, where can we get money? How can we help you? What are we going to do? And I said, I don't think people in Ohio, the taxpayers, don't understand that if a child leaves the public school, what's going on now is that all these charter schools that are forming take the money from the public school system. Right. And the general voter does not know that. And then we were told by several of the teachers, they said, Marcy, the problem is when the kids then come back to us, they are so far behind. We're trying to bring them up because they're not under the same system of evaluation standards. And this is happening, this isn't just happening in Lorain. It's happening all over Ohio and frankly in many other places in the country. So this is something for us as citizens to be conscious of and to try to be better adults in this society so that we aren't harming the next generation. And that is a struggle in every community in Ohio, I can guarantee you, certainly in Lorain.
Thank you, you've been a kind
Thank you.
You said, Congresswoman, that you have solid roots in Anaheim. Is there any way that we could get Albert Pujols to endorse the
Would that be good? I don't know. I was in Jacinto elementary school, and I asked everybody what did they want to be when they grew up, and they wanted to be a basketball player, or a basketball player, or a basketball player, or a basketball player. I said, you all must be Buckeyes. I said, what about baseball? They all looked at me, they said, we don't have a baseball team. So I don't know.
Loretta, if I may address
Yes.
real quick, thank you both ladies for your service. Thank you to your husband's service to our country. My son is a U.S. Navy enlisted man, probably serving. But you mentioned, both of you, schools so often in your speeches this morning. I want to acknowledge my mother, Josephine Garcia. She is a 30-year honorably retired Head Start teacher.
The children that came in and spoke Spanish, they spoke it, they learned the English before they went out of their kindergarten.
Absolutely.
And the other children picked up the Spanish too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important.
All right, we have basically 8 days